Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the NSSR. This is your host, Tommy Talks, once again reminding you to run your own race to medicine one day at a time. So today is a special evening because we actually have a live Q&A session, and I'm really grateful to Dr. DeSouza who came on and also to my mentees and other people who have joined. I know this is going to be very exciting for them to actually get to interact with a physician, especially in time of COVID where that's been greatly reduced. And so I'm really excited to have something like this be available to students who are looking to apply to medical school. Dr. DeSouza is a board certified psychiatrist on faculty at Howard University School of Medicine. She completed her general residency in public psychiatry training in the Department of Psychiatry at Yale School of Medicine. She also received her medical doctor and Master of Health Science degrees from Yale. Motivated by her faith, she worked as a community organizer between college and medical school. She is also a member of the Jamaica Psychiatric Association, and she can be reached at Dr. Flavia DeSouza on Twitter. So, really excited to have you here today. And a lot of people sent in a lot of questions beforehand. So, we'll try to get through some of those. And I've broken them down into sections so that way we'll do one section and then go through those submitted questions and give people a chance to actually ask some more. I bet people want to know a little bit about you. Can you tell us what you do as a psychiatrist, your interests, and why those on the journey to medicine should consider your field?
Well, psychiatry is a wonderful field, and it is growing so much at this time. There's so much opportunity for research and application of new knowledge and concepts, both in the biological sphere as well as the psychological sphere. Psychiatry is wonderful for a couple of different reasons. You can have a really great work-life balance with psychiatry. With the boom of virtual, online everything, people set up their own private telepsychiatry practices and organize their own time. There's a space for you to really think about applying the humanities and social sciences in psychiatry, because it's not just the prescription of medications, but really largely thinking about a person and what makes them ill, the structures and systems in society that contribute to their illness, as well as other aspects of their identities. All of this is woven into how we think about our patients in psychiatry. And if you choose to go down a path where you're considering providing more psychotherapy or working as a writer or a speaker, then you can weave these aspects of the patient and the patient's stories and lives into your work. So besides the lifestyle and just it being really interesting, I think it makes any person who is pursuing the field a better person, because throughout the journey of becoming a psychiatrist, really in dealing with so many people's stories and doing a lot of personal reflection on your own, you begin to examine yourself and you begin to examine the defenses you might have that prevent you from moving forward in different aspects of your life. So psychological defenses. It may help you to be more empathetic to different individuals, including persons even in your family who you might not have understood before. So all of those reasons, I think, make the field of psychiatry a really attractive one. I would say two of them, so the kind of the lifestyle as well as the making a better person, I could not have understood prior to psychiatry residency training. I knew I was excited by the content. I knew I liked what I was learning in class. I knew that the field was really wide open, and there's so few psychiatrists and so many more that's needed that it was a good profession to be in. I could not really anticipate the other things I mentioned.
Thank you so much. And you mentioned something that I do want to ask about. You talked about, getting to understand people maybe in your family or your community that you may not have understood before. And to that, I wanted to ask about your work in the Jamaican Psychiatric Association.
Yeah, sure. So I was born and raised in Jamaica. I came to the United States for higher education. And because of that connection with a place that I still call home, I made a point of visiting as often as I could. And when I started my professional training, to connect with mentors who were working and living in Jamaica. And so for me, so there are two parts to your question. The first is speaking to this idea of understanding people in your community a little bit better. And I think a part of that is because there is time and space that can be created in the training program to do quite a bit of introspection, whether it's through one's own personal individual therapy, whether it's through really learning about psychopathology. And many families, there might be someone who has psychiatric illness and it's not understood really until you go into your training. Maybe it might be something as simple as how to build an alliance with another human being. So in psychiatry, we call it the therapeutic alliance. What kinds of things to say and not say. So that is what I mean when I say it can help an individual become a better person. As it relates to the community, Jamaica is a different beast than the United States of America in that there are less resources, but the public health system is much more developed. There are ways and thinking of practice that may not even have occurred yet in the United States because they are specific for the culture and the people. So there might be preventative psychiatric measures. I'm thinking of one particular organization that's been doing really great work that are culturally appropriate for the people group. And lots of thought maybe have been put into that. Whereas in the US, that may not be taught formally in many programs, culturally specific psychotherapeutic techniques. So it's a way that's helped me to remain connected to the country and to the people and to the thinking. In the Jamaica Psychiatric Association, one of the things that's really nice is that there's a WhatsApp group. So it's a way for me to very informally know, okay, what are the medications that are available to persons who are living in Jamaica? What are some of the current issues in the psychiatric community? What are some of the issues that people in general are facing? What are the resources that are needed to move the field forward? What are some of the pressing public policy concerns of psychiatrists and individuals in Jamaica? How do psychiatrists work with psychologists? What are the conferences that are going on? So it helps me really keep in tune, even if I'm not physically there, with some of what's going on the ground.
When I was introducing you, I mentioned that, you're very heavily influenced by your faith and it drives a lot of what you do. Can you speak to the kind of marrying of your faith and psychiatry and how one influences the other?
Yeah, I can very much speak to that. So I would say my faith informs two major ways that I move through the world. One is my pursuit of social justice, and two is how it is that I work with my colleagues, with my patients, and what it is that I may be able to offer to them. So full disclosure, this is personal and not everyone may be able to relate to this, but in about college, I would say I had a second conversion experience where I began to be presented with how much my belief system really believed in the pursuit of social justice. And this was through a retreat that I participated in where we examined scriptures and what it said about those kinds of issues. And so that was really a turning point for me where I felt as though I was being called to pursue this kind of work. And that's how I ended up in community organizing for some years before medical school. And it also helps me to think about the work that I'm doing now and to frame it not just as individual practice, but within kind of a population-based approach or within the context that people are living and working in. It's not just one-on-one, but there are many other things that are informing the encounter. The second thing that I mentioned is the way I hope to move in relationships and what it is that I hope to offer to my patients. So I really come from a position where I believe in hope, regardless of wherever a person might be on their journey, and how ill they are and how difficult things may be in their family. And for me personally, the only reason that I am able to offer that is because of the food that I get from my own personal faith journey. And then the second thing is, and I'm going to use the word love, the love that I have for my colleagues and for my patients. What does it mean to operate from that space in my workplace? What does it mean to be patient and kind, even when things are tense or when people are difficult? How do I move through conflict? All of those kinds of things are informed by my personal belief system.
one thing that I mentioned earlier is that with now 2020, 2021, COVID, et cetera, students have been limited in their access to physicians. And now we're having a space where many people are doing virtual shadowing, some few in-person shadowing things are happening, and events like this where they get to meet physicians. So one person asked that, do you think virtual interactions essentially with physicians have any better or worse weight than in-person ones? And then how can someone maximize those opportunities?
Yeah, so this is a problem all around the country and really the world right now. To me, to take full advantage of a space, you have to push yourself to participate. Maximizing the time that you're spending on Zoom is important. And then also, if you need to take breaks, and I know a lot of instructors are getting to a place where they understand. And so if you really can't pay attention to what is going on, I would say take a break. So, it's difficult when a policy is in place that says, well, you have to be visually present, but at the same time, you're not really engaged or participating. To me, engagement and participating is so much more important, especially for the learner. When you're doing volunteerism work and shadowing, it's very important for a pre-medical person to understand what the purpose is. So is your purpose just to have it on your resume so your resume looks nicer? Is your purpose to really explore to see if this is the right fit for you? Is the purpose to network because you want to have an edge for a particular subspecialty? Is the purpose because you want to stay in a particular part of the country? Your purpose is going to inform what you do and how you do it on your shadowing experiences. So if it's genuine, I'm figuring out if this field is the best for me, then you might want to really ask some in-depth questions of the physicians that you are speaking to, even if you can't actually participate in patient care. If you are doing it because you want to get an edge in a subspecialty, then really you have to be working with one or two people who are in the subspecialty and finding out what it is that they need and what it is that they're willing to offer to you. If it's a resume builder, and I'm not encouraging this, but really you don't have to have a substantial experience. If it's just something you want to put on your resume, if you're just spending time doing something could be being a part of a Zoom event and not having your video on, but still you're able to put it on your resume. So really it's important for the person to center within themselves, why am I doing this? And then that's going to inform how it is that they're doing what they're doing. I don't know what the landscape is nationally, but I would be surprised if many people are taking on pre-meds that they don't know personally to do shadowing at this time. There is a myth about the importance of this on the resume. Really, the bottom line is institutions want to see maybe demonstrated interest or that individuals have put some thought into moving forward. I did not have any substantial experiences in medicine before I applied into medical school. However, I had substantial experiences in other areas and I had given it a great deal of thought and I could answer the question in a way that reflected my thought process. And so I don't think not having these experiences held me back in any way because I was really confident about what I was doing and the journey that I had taken thus far. So that's also really important as well.
And I'm glad that you mentioned how to maximize your opportunities for shadowing. One thing that I wanted to ask you from your personal experience of applying to medical school was the big black cloud of the MCAT. How was that experience for you? And what would you advise people who are currently dealing with that exam right now?
Sure. So for me, after I graduated from college, I worked for 5 to 6 years, mostly in community organizing. So I was completely outside of the field of medicine, doing social justice work through 2 different ministry organizations mostly. And so for me, when I was doing the NCAT, I did not have support group. I didn't take a class. I was working at the same time. And so I had to study on my own time. And in retrospect, I actually think not doing it with the pressure of people around me was helpful for me and my temperament, because I was able to take my time with the studying. There was no internal rush to get through at a certain time. And I really only scheduled the exam when I felt that I was close to the score that I wanted to see myself getting on the exam. So there was really no rush. And that was what worked for me. So if other people's journeys are different, though. I know many people do the MCATs when they are in college. Some people do it shortly after. And so some planning ahead of time would need to happen. And it would be determined by how good of a test taker you are. So many of these examinations don't actually determine how well you will do as a physician or as a person who's practicing their area of expertise later on in life. It really is asking about some of your academic abilities, as well as just it's like a marker for that, and it's not a fair marker across the board anyways. And so if many people who are not good test takers, I have many friends, personal friends, who are not good test takers, who are phenomenal physicians, who have matched into very competitive specialties at very competitive programs nationally, and may have not done well in the MCATs, in the STEPs, and there are 3-step examinations that people have to take in medical school. So that being said, if you're not necessarily a good test taker, I would say you have to plan far ahead in advance. Maybe if you're in college and you are used to doing 4 courses a semester, you may have to cut down to 3 and a very easy course so that you have time to study, or you may have to cut back on some extracurricular activities. Other individuals who may be better at test taking may not have to put as much time into preparing for the test. So it will vary from person to person.
And you mentioned something too that I think a lot of people will resonate with that are here. You said that you worked for about 5 or 6 years between college and medical school. Can you talk about that experience and what it did for you coming into medical school and how you think it helped you stand out?
Yeah, so I was one of a handful of people in my class who had experienced significant experiences that were not medicine or medically related. So that's the first thing. So I diversified my group. I was really an asset for the group. And so that is how I believe the admissions office really viewed it. They thought it was impressive what I had done. They thought it was very interesting, and they wanted to have a conversation with me about my work. The second thing is that I felt very comfortable interacting with all kinds of people because of the work that I had done before, including people who are much older than myself that I had to be working within the community. So moving into interactions with patients, even if I wasn't good at the content, just the interaction itself came easily to me. And then the third thing that many people struggle with is understanding that it's not just what's happening inside of the body that makes a person ill, but it's many other things that happen outside of the body, in the family, in the community, structurally, in policy, that really make people ill. Those concepts come very easily to me because I saw it when I was working in communities. I saw structural racism at play. And so even if I didn't have the language at the time, when I started to be presented with those concepts in medical school, or even when I didn't, I could kind of merge my experiences from before with the experiences I was having in medical school to present a more holistic view of what was going on with the patients. I would also add that hindsight is 2020. It's really difficult, because I'm even imagining myself when I was in college and I was even working as an organizer. It's really difficult to understand, unless you have someone in your family who is in medicine, and I did not, how much you can do with a medical degree that's not just direct clinical care. So many people, I had individuals who were in my medical school class who actually didn't go on to practice. They went into consulting. They switched fields entirely, and they're doing more public health work. They're doing administration work. They're starting up their own businesses. There's, the field of digital medicine now. There's so much. And so just because you don't have one or two experiences, or just because you are non-traditional, does not mean that you are excluded from medicine, because there's so much room and ways that you can actually do work in the field of medicine later on after you've gotten your credentials. It's just hard to see that if you're not on the other side, and if you don't have people who are modeling that for you.
Someone asked, and I just want to get your honest thoughts on this. Is it okay to have a C in a class before med school?
I saw that question, and it would have been really wonderful to talk to the person to get kind of underneath what that question is about and what kind of insecurities low grades, or what we consider to be low grades, raise for individuals. So I'm going to preface my answer by saying medical schools look at the whole individual. That's the first thing. The second thing is it's important for you or any individual applying to a medical school that's going to be a right fit. And I know some of us don't have this privilege. So if there are aspects of your person that you want to bring to the table that you cannot, because the medical school only focuses on grades, that may be problematic and detrimental to your psychological health and well-being. It may not actually be a psychologically safe learning environment. So those are two things I want to say. If you're an individual who is struggling academically, maybe is getting a C or several C's, then the medical school's concern will be, is this person going to be able to keep up with the material? If you've been able to demonstrate this in other ways, maybe through your scores on other examinations or through improvement over the years. So for example, if you're starting off college, it's hard, you're getting used to a new environment, maybe a new part of the country, maybe a new part of the world, and you have improvement over the 4 years. That's one way of them answering that question. So perhaps you started off with C's and you ended up with A's, or perhaps you started off with C minuses and you ended up with B pluses. That is an improvement over a period of time. Or perhaps you didn't do so well in your first few years, but you ended up scoring excellently on your examination. Or maybe if you feel the need to, you can do additional courses. And this gets into one of the questions that you asked that I can't really speak that much to, but considering doing a post-baccalaureate or some master's classes. So I would not worry too much about a single C, because it's a grade in a context. It's a grade in the context of the individual. It's a grade in the context of a person's academic journey. It's a grade in the context of how the medical school is going to view the persons who come in and the kind of support they're going to give to you. Striving for excellence is very different from striving for perfection. We all have our imperfections and faults. And I think it's a very dangerous space to live in, because when you mess up, it can become so overwhelming that it can throw you into psychological tailspin. And there is no mechanism for you internally to handle that because you haven't done it over time, or you're not necessarily in an environment where you can speak freely about how it is that you're feeling and how you're processing this. This sets up all kinds of issues for individuals who are high achievers, especially in high pressure environments. And it's maybe one of the reasons I'm suggesting this here. I'd have to look at the literature. I have no evidence, but it may be one of the reasons why there's such high rates of depression and even suicidality in medicine. This idea that we have to be something that we really can't be as human beings. And then if we can't be that and we fail, then how can we live with ourselves?
It is hard when we are basically put in a pressure cooker and are told that you have to be perfect or you're a failure to make it to medical school, or even in medical school to make it to residency and all these things. There has to be some room for you to be you, and for you to fail, and for you to recover, and for you to be able to tell that story. But, if you're not given that chance, or if you don't know that you can, how do you cope when things don't go right? Because you've had this narrative of perfection in your mind for so long that any deviation from that makes it hard to cope. So thank you so much for speaking to that. I think it's something that everyone will benefit from hearing. And that actually leads into my last question, which is, what advice do you have for people who are on this call, people that are going to watch this later on, just about, the journey to medicine and how they can put their best foot forward?
I would say the first thing that came immediately to mind is to be true to yourself and to pursue your passions fully. So just getting back to some of the themes that came up on the call, it's important to be in a space that really celebrates you and celebrates what it is that you have to offer to the world. And I think even on the interview trail, sometimes people get anxious or nervous in interviews simply because they want to present something that maybe they're not. And like I said before, really want to be in a space that's going to be accepting of who it is that you are and what it is that you can offer, including outside of the academic environment. You also want to be in a space where you'll be happy and be able to do the work, because the work and the journey is hard. So this gets into the second part with the passion. The journey is long. It's not short. It's not for the swift. It's for those who can endure. You know, it's medical school. It's college and medical school, then residency. And for some people, subspecialization, which takes a really long time. So it's important also to have a sense of why it is that you're doing what you're doing, because you're going to have to go back to that when things get hard or when you're not so sure about the decision that you made anymore. And that's going to happen. That's invariable in medicine, because you're going to be doing long nights or you're going to be doing paperwork that you don't want to do. But you have to really have a vision for yourself so that you can kind of hold steadfast to your passions and pursue them.
Someone says, in the field of psychiatry, can you provide therapy and counseling without using medicine? Like, I believe they're talking about like medications.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's a big part of how it is that we practice. Many psychologists, many clinical licensed social workers do this. There are other individuals who are not medical doctors who provide psychotherapy, but there are also individuals who are medical doctors who provide psychotherapy. And I was trained to do this when I was in residency. I had many patients on my panel who were just coming to me weekly for therapy.
So yes, that is possible. Thank you so much for getting on this call to speak to people and to just tell your story and give your advice. I'm very grateful.
Yeah,
I value your time a lot.
Thank you. I'm happy to share.
Yeah. And is it okay for people to contact you on Twitter?
Yeah, at Flavia DeSouza.
I know that you are very busy, and so I will let you go. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you so much, Tommy Talk. It was a pleasure being here.
Likewise. Thank you. Have a good night.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.